All right, good afternoon. So I've been getting a lot of questions asked of me about teeth and do we see any evidence of trauma and so forth. So I thought maybe I should have a little press conference and kind of clarify some things. We actually didn't have a press conference about this case at all, and for a lot of reasons, mostly out of respect for his family. But at this point, it seems like there are more questions than answers, and maybe we should provide you some of those answers. So, with respect to whether there was any evidence of trauma to the teeth, yes, we did do a view. We did do an external examination of Otto. We also had extensive medical imaging on Otto. We also did a post-mortem CT scan, which we defined as a virtual autopsy. And with all of that information, we were able to, and we also consulted our forensic dentist, Dr. Wright, and had him take a look at the imaging, specifically dealing with the lower teeth and mandible. And he agreed with us that there is no evidence of trauma to the lower teeth or mandible on the imaging or by physical examination. So that being said, I thought we addressed that particular question, but was there anything else that
Dr. Smoker, why did you feel the need at the time to reach out to a forensic dentist? Is that typical?
We usually reach out to a forensic dentist for identification purposes. A lot of times we will identify people that we may suspect is so-and-so, but we'll confirm that with his expertise, we're using his expertise. So we have a very good relationship with Dr. Wright, and so it was an easy call to make. I mean, as a radiologist, I can tell you I looked at the imaging and I looked at the mandible, I looked at the teeth, and I felt very comfortable that there wasn't any evidence of trauma, but let's face it, I'm not a dentist.
So the teeth were not, quote, rearranged with a pair of pliers, as the father has said to him. It appeared twice, he said that in an interview, that they were rearranged with pliers.
There was no evidence of trauma to the teeth. Now, that being said, I will tell you that the forensic dentist did let me know that the front incisors often have a rounded root and they will sometimes twist as they're developing, but I'm not an expert on that, but I can tell you that we didn't see any evidence of trauma to the teeth.
Were you surprised at the statement that the Warmbier family made yesterday?
We were surprised that that statement.
Was there any evidence he was tortured?
I think you need to define torture. The fact that he has anoxic encephalopathy, or brain damage caused by the lack of oxygen to the brain, we don't know what the root cause of that is. There's a couple of ways that you can get that. So you either have to discontinue blood flow to the brain or stop breathing. And what caused either one of those possible events, we wouldn't know. I mean, could that have been torture at the time? We don't know. We don't have enough information about what happened to Otto at that initial insult to draw any concrete conclusions.
But nothing on his body. There are no wounds. There are no head wounds. Nothing. In fact, his body, according to the report, is a well-nourished male, which seems a little surprising to me considering he was in this sort of unresponsive state for a year. Well, can you explain that kind of contradiction?
So, we agree. We believe that for somebody who's been bedridden for more than a year, that his body was in excellent condition, his skin was in excellent condition. We didn't see any evidence of decubiti or bed sores. Physically, as far as wounds, there were a few small scars that we documented. There was one that we really couldn't explain for medical instrumentation, which some of the other scars we could. But there wasn't anything on the external examination to indicate, other than that one scar that we couldn't explain, to indicate torture. So we didn't see any evidence of healing fractures or healed fractures that would have been within that time frame. If that was one of the things that was asked is, did he have any broken bones, and so forth. Not to our knowledge, not that we've been able to observe or document by medical imaging.
So somebody, in order for him to be a well-nourished male under those conditions, does that take a lot of work? Because I'm thinking the skin would break down, or I mean, I don't know anything, but how much did they care for him? Did they take care of him?
Well, I mean, I think most people are familiar with bedridden people. It takes a lot of care and a lot of consistent rotating and conditioning of the skin to make sure that you don't have skin breakdown. So I'm sure that he had to have round-the-clock care to be able to maintain the skin in the condition that it was in.
Some of the statements from the Warmbier family yesterday, Dr. Smarko indicated, it just really was a very difficult to kind of process, even from my end. The family going on the plane, talking about Otto being in just involuntarily jerking around, blind, deaf, making inhumane noises. Of course, a comment about the teeth and so forth. Again, difficult to necessarily process on this end. When you hear those statements, it's hard for us lay people to kind of square the two accounts. And when we read the postmortem report, how do we square that up together? Right?
So, in patients that have chronic anoxic encephalopathy or chronic brain damage that we've seen, there are involuntary movements and sounds and grunts and so forth that happen. And when you're not familiar with patients that have that kind of brain damage, I think it's going to be alarming for a lot of people. But, a lot of the involuntary movements are just that.
Can you give us just a general statement of just what the parents have said, what the perception is, and what your finding is altogether?
They're grieving parents, and I really can't make comments about what they've said or their perception. All I can tell you is we here in this office depend on science for our conclusions. And if we don't have the science to back them up, we don't conjecture. And so, if we saw something that was significant and we could back it up with photos or with medical imaging, since we didn't do an autopsy in this case, we would do that.
Dr. Sanmarco, do you think botulism poisoning is a possible cause for what happened to Otto Warmbier?
I don't have any expertise in that, and what I can tell you though is that the brain was starved of oxygen, and that is what would cause the changes that we saw in the brain. And I think we're in agreement with his medical care team that felt the same way, that it was anoxic encephalopathy. And you either have to stop breathing or blood flow has to stop to the brain.
If you had been able to do an autopsy, would you be able to tell how that happened?
No. And that was actually, not just the family asking us not to do the autopsy. Those were the family's wishes. But we had a discussion. All 5 doctors in this office had a discussion on what do you think could be gained by doing an autopsy in this particular case, considering we believe the insult to him or the severe damage, what happened to him happened over a year before he came here. And we felt like nothing significant was going to be gained from an autopsy, and we honored the family's wishes.
Why do you believe, or do you know, why he was alive for a year, kept alive, cared for a year, and then died 6 days after coming here?
If you're asking me, nothing specific was done, but he was put on comfort care measures.
And what exactly does that mean?
That means keeping him comfortable and in his particular case, stopping the enteral feedings.
So he was allowed to die. The feeding tube came out.
Feeding tube came out.
He was sort of in hospice care.
What you mentioned a virtual autopsy for those watching now. What exactly is that? And you say virtual autopsy would lead me to wonder: can you not determine a specific cause of death by doing that? I'm assuming no. But what is a virtual autopsy, and what are the limitations?
Well, anytime in this particular case, since we weren't doing an autopsy, we wanted a way to be able to take a look inside, along with the external examination, and to see if there was anything major that we couldn't see from the outside. So a virtual autopsy in this particular case is a CT scan that was done from the top of his head to the mid-thigh region, and then we're able to reconstruct those images both in 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional technology, using that technology and capability. So we're able to take a look at his body in a lot of different ways, from the inside out, we're able to take a look at his skeleton, we're able to take a look at his organs, and without actually a conventional autopsy and making any cuts. So without altering the actual evidence. And so I think there are limitations to that. For example, if somebody dies of an overdose, your virtual autopsy may show nothing. And without having a piece of tissue or body fluids to examine, you're not going to have any answers.
Just to clarify, his brain damage had to be done deliberately. That's nothing that could have been done naturally.
I can't answer that because I don't know what happened to him.
Is that something that could happen naturally?
If he had a cardiac arrest,
Doctor,
Or hung somebody on him?
but that's not natural.
Right,
Right.
but I'm saying, but that's another way.
So,
When there's no
I mean,
marks.
the manner of death that our office addresses, the manners of death that we discuss. Is it suicide? Is it homicide? Is it natural? Is it accidental? Or is it undetermined?
So his could have been natural. There are cases where his could be
If
natural.
he had a cardiac arrest, absolutely.
But right now, it's officially what?
Undetermined.
Determined.
yeah, doctor, he was sentenced to hard labor. Were there any physical signs of extra exertion to his body that might have
That's
stressed?
something we're not gonna be able to see 15 months out. If you ask me, were there any signs of, acute trauma to the body at the time that we received the body? No.
When the father says Otto was systematically tortured and intentionally injured, I mean, that gives us a visual of something that I don't hear here. But again, you're saying you don't know what happened to him. You don't know if this is a true statement or just a perception, right?
We don't know, like I said, as far as the torture of it, what caused the anoxic encephalopathy. Was it torture at that time? We don't know what happened to him to cause that brain damage over a year before he died. We don't know what happened to him. And that's the bottom line. I wish we had some answers, and I know that the family is looking for answers, but at this point, we're never going to know unless the people that were there at the time it happened come forward and say, this is what happened to Otto.
Are the geopolitical elements at play here? Look, we're all in this room together, and we know that the bombast that goes back and forth between the two sides. Does it make you a little reluctant to even address this issue? These are heady things going on in the world right now.
You know what? We try and stick to the science.
Yeah.
We try and stick to the evidence that we have, the proof that we have, what was in front of us, and going with hypotheses and conjecturing about what might have happened, it doesn't help anybody. I mean, if I had a way to back any of those statements up, I would, but I don't know. Do I have my theories? Sure, but I'm not going to voice them here because I don't have any science to back up my theories.
Could those theories have been fact if you were able to do an autopsy?
No, and that was key in us making the decision not to do the autopsy, not just to honor the family's wishes, but also, were we going to get concrete answers? What was the likelihood of getting concrete answers to cause and manner of death by doing an autopsy?
What information was received from North Korea, and were there any additional requests made to them for medical information after he died?
Now, that's something you're probably going to have to ask his medical team. I can tell you that we received 2 sets of imaging from North Korea of the imaging that he had, MRIs, and we did receive those.
What did they show?
They showed anoxic brain injury.
How long ago?
The first set of imaging that we received from North Korea was from April 2016, and then the second was from July 2016.
So it said on the.
So yes, the brain changes were
Many
present,
months.
and they progressed during that time period. And then the scans that we had here from when he came to Cincinnati showed further progression.
And their botulism claim, you see no evidence to support
I
that.
can't even address that because it's not something that we can actually prove or disprove.
Is there anything the family said that you can confirm, or?
I'm not familiar with all the statements that the
Oh,
family
you
made.
didn't see it.
Like I
Okay.
said,
Right.
they're a grieving family, and as a mother, I feel for them. We really feel for their family, and I think it's hard to learn to deal with the loss of a child. And, some people may deal with it with depression, and some people may deal with it in anger, some people may look to blame somebody, some people may just push it aside and ignore it. There's a lot of different ways people deal with grief.
Are you still in contact with them, or when was the last time you spoke?
I haven't spoken to them since since June.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Any
very
other
much.
questions?